E-L-O-E-J, a little aloha in our day. Spread a little aloha around the world at breakfast with Bob.
Thank you, Poncho Man. Welcome, everybody. Breakfast with Bob. My name is Bob Babbitt. Our Not Quite Kona edition. We're brought to you by Master Spas, biostarks.com, S Fuels Go Longer, Hoka, Let's Fly, Form Smart Swim Goggles, Quintana Roo Zoot, Premium Plus Sports, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. Our first 29 years, we have raised $150 million and sent out over 40,000 grants to challenged athletes in all 50 states and 73 countries, and more importantly, for 104 different sports. And speaking of different sports, today we're talking a little baseball with DJ Snelten, who I was lucky enough to meet at the post-race Kona party at Huggos. How you doing, DJ?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Not a problem. So you were originally drafted by the Padres, right? Is that in 2010?
Yep, out of high school, was drafted by the Padres and had a decision of whether I needed to start my pro career or if I needed to go to Minnesota.
And yeah, so you went to University of Minnesota, and after your junior year, drafted again, 9th round, by the Giants?
Yes. Yep.
And when you played for the one of the Giants minor league teams, 2013, 3-1, 157 ERA. You were doing really, really well. Talk a little bit about there seems to be such a difference when you're in the big leagues. I mean, that's huge. And when you're in the minors, you're on the buses. And talk a little bit about the difference about being in the big leagues and being one step below that.
Oh, there's absolutely a big difference between the two of those things, but not in the way that most people would assume. A lot of people, I think that the game is played at an extremely high level, and it is. It's the best athletes in the world playing. But the game itself doesn't really change. So you spend all this time training and climbing through the minor league systems. And then once you finally get that opportunity to toe the rubber on a major league, facility or, be on a major league field, you realize that part doesn't change. But what changes is the travel, where we stay, etiquette, the formalities of things, making sure that we conduct ourselves as professionals, frankly. And, that was the part that I think everybody for the first week or so kind of gets thrown through the loop a little bit, because it's just a different standard of living.
So growing up, was baseball always your sport?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, baseball was probably always my sport, but my dad was actually a professional golfer for 4 years. So I grew up with the replica of hole 17 of TPC Sawgrass in my front yard. And we always went golfing. That was kind of our escape on the weekends. It would be me, my dad, and my brother. And we would all go to the same course down the road. And that was kind of just like a really fond memory for me. So I would say baseball and golf.
And that was Lake Villa?
That was in Lake Villa. Yeah.
It's so funny because I actually worked at a residential treatment center at Central Baptist Children's Home right there on 83. It's so wild that when we met at the party, I'm like, wait a second, you're from Lake Villa? There's not often you meet somebody from a town you worked in the middle of nowhere.
Definitely a small world. Lake Villa it's one of those towns where the first stoplight you're in it and the second light you're out of it. So when I heard you say that you were in Lake Villa, I kind of had to stop for a second because I had to process the fact that you even knew what Lake Villa was, let alone had been there.
So your first opportunity to pitch in the bigs, was that with the Giants, April 28th, 2018?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Take me through that, because things happen really quickly. Well, you're in the minors the day before, and next thing you know, you're up in the big leagues.
That was a whirlwind of a day. It was a doubleheader that day, and they were playing against the Dodgers. And I was out in Sacramento, so I was in AAA, and I was actually working on building a guitar for one of my teammates, Chase Darnaud, and I forgot a part, so I took my moped back to my scooter down the street. And out of nowhere, I saw I had 2 or 3 missed calls from Dave Brundage, our manager there. And I thought, oh no, I missed a meeting. Maybe I'm in trouble, So I call him right away and I'm like, hey, is everything okay, Brundy? And he goes, well, what are you doing? We have a Mercedes here waiting for you. You're getting called up to the big leagues. You got to go. So I'm sitting in my car, frantically panicking, grabbing the guitar piece that I was looking for. I'm on my scooter, just going, yes, riding down the street. People who saw me probably thought I was a crazy person, but I'm driving back. I get in the Mercedes, and they drive me down to San Francisco. I get in, They get me tailored really quickly to make sure that my uniform fit me. And then as soon as that happened, I think I showed up in the third or fourth inning of the game. I got that figured out. They told me to go say hey to the pitching coach and go say hey to the manager. So, I go and said hey to Bruce Bochy. I go say hey to, Kurt Young. And this is the part that always makes me laugh when I think about it. They said, hey, how was the ride? Hopefully it was comfortable. Did you feel pretty good? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay, good. Listen, hey, if Brandon Crawford scores this guy from second, you're in the game. So you should go get loose. So I didn't even have a second to enjoy the process. And before I know it, I'm running down to the bullpen. Tony Watson's getting loose. And sure enough, single up the middle, guy scores from second. Tony looks at me and goes, I guess you're in, man. And I'm just like, I thought I was going to at least get to sit and watch and enjoy this moment. And before I know it, I'm facing the 2, 3, and 4 hitters, which was Corey Seager, Yasmani Grandal, and Cody Bellinger. And I end up having a 1, 2, 3 inning. And I remember just thinking, man, I'm on top of the world right now. There's 40,000 people here watching me. This is such a cool experience. And Bruce Bochy kind of asks me, he's like, how was that? Was that pretty amazing? And I was like, yeah, that was incredible. He goes, good, grab a bat. You're on deck. And I was,
what, you're going to hit?
I didn't. I got to hit, but I didn't know what was happening. And I remember the equipment manager kind of running up to me, going, "I'm so sorry. Rookies usually never hit in their debut of their pitchers. Blah blah blah." And I was like, "That's fine, but I don't have any gear. I don't have a helmet. I don't have a bat. I don't have anything." And I feel a tap on my shoulder, and it's Buster Posey, and he goes, "Hey, you can use my bat, but try not to break it." Tony Watson gives me a helmet, and Brandon Crawford gives me a pair of batting gloves, and so I get up to the plate and I'm thinking, I feel invincible right now. It's I feel like I'm in that movie like Mike, where they gave me all their equipment and now I'm going to have their talent. And I'm like, all right, I'm swinging first pitch. And so sure enough, I swing at a first pitch sinker and I end up hitting a screaming line drive foul and it hits somebody in the stands. And it was in that moment I realized, oh no, my actions have consequences. And for the rest of the at bat, I was scared. And I just remember he eventually struck me out on a changeup and I walked away laughing, going, I had to make him throw an off-speed pitch. That's a victory for me.
For a pitcher, absolutely.
So
how cool. So you're facing Corey Seager, all-star, Yasmani Grandal, all-star, Cody Bellinger, all-star, and MVP.
Yep. Yeah,
welcome to the big leagues.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and Bruce Bochy is one of our favorites because he managed down here in San Diego. And I just remember, a lot of managers sort of get in the way. And Bochy was always the type of guy who it was always players first. It was always the players. He never was one of those guys to yell at a player in public. Anything he needed to do was behind closed doors, which I think is why he was so successful.
There will always be a special place in my heart for Bruce Bochy. I don't think I could have been luckier to have had a manager of his caliber as my first major league manager. I'll never forget my first time pitching on a big league field. It was at the end of spring training. We had this AAA versus big leagues thing happen. And I ended up getting 2 innings against the big league staff. I ended up striking out 6 guys in 2 innings. I go to pack my bag up thinking all right, this was a fun experience. And out of nowhere, one of the equipment managers goes, have you packed your stuff up? Okay, good. You're throwing it on the big league bus. You're coming back for the Bay Series Classic against Oakland. So I was in the final series before the opening day roster opened up. And needless to say, it was one of the most unfavorable outings that one could ask for. I pitched in the 10th inning. Anything that could have gone wrong kind of went wrong. I think I ended up giving up something like 7 runs or something in the 10th inning. It was just change up off the plate. Guy sticks his butt out, flicks his wrist. It lands on the foul line for a double, ground ball through the hole, just bleeding through the outing. And I remember thinking all right, well, this is an opportunity for me to prove that I'm resilient and I'm not going to let this affect me. And the next day I get to the field. It's the 7th inning. And out of nowhere, Bruce Bochy, Snelly, come here. And he calls me over and he goes, hey, how are you feeling? I said, oh, I feel good. I was like, I'm ready if you need me. And he goes, no, I mean, after yesterday, how are you feeling? And I went, well, the funny thing about baseball is, there's 100 ways to get outs and there's 100 ways to score runs, so I can't really control much of what happened. It is what it is. It probably wasn't the most ideal thing to happen, but I'm still alive and I'm still here. And he goes, I love that answer. As a reward, grab a bat. You're on deck. And I'm just like, well, I haven't swung a bat in 7-8 years. I'm facing Jesus Luzardo and he keeps busting me inside with 98 miles an hour. So, and I remember the first pitch, I'm thinking I'm going to swing first pitch again. And I thought I was on it. And all of a sudden I heard the dugout erupt in laughter. And turns out I didn't start my swing until the ball was already in the glove. So I was getting laughed at, which was why when I got to the big leagues, 6 weeks later, I thought I will not be late on this fastball. I will not embarrass myself again. And I managed to at least make contact. So that was a plus. But
That's very cool.
yeah.
And I mean, you've been with how many teams now?
This will be my fifth. I spent about 5.5 years with San Fran, about a year with Baltimore, give or take. I had the 2020 season with Tampa Bay. I played in-ball in 19 for Chicago, signed by the Cubs in 21, and then I just got signed by the Yankees this year.
How fun! Got signed by the Yankees. They just signed Judge. They got looked at their, they've got everything heading in the right direction.
No, it's going to be an exciting year. It's absolutely going to be an exciting year.
What when you have that, you back to the minors, up to the majors, how hard is it to deal with that? Because you're only as good as your last outing in your profession.
No, absolutely. I think initially it was difficult. I've had kind of a unique journey in the last 4 years where I ended up having to play independent baseball in 2019, and that was a really good learning experience to find myself again. 2020, I was as ready as I ever could have been for the big leagues, and then obviously the pandemic happened, and that went from no minor league baseball to having an alternate 60-man site, which I was lucky enough to be a part of. And then they didn't find an opportunity to use me in the big leagues. That's part of the business. And 2021 rolled around. I showed up to spring training with the Cubs. My elbow didn't feel great. And we spent about 5 months trying to decipher why it hurt. And ultimately ended up throwing after being released by them for the Brewers. And they took a look at my image and told me, your elbow is 90% torn. You need to get that fixed. So then I underwent Tommy John surgery. And so it's been this very long road, but I'm very grateful for it because I kind of had to learn to step away from living and dying with each individual outing, kind of like as you said. And I've kind of learned to not let what happened to me in the past define who I was as a player and take this opportunity to kind of reinvent myself more holistically as an individual.
And how important has music been? Because you started playing guitar when you were young. You have a band. You guys, I think you actually recorded. So it seemed like having something that you're also passionate about allows you maybe to have success in an area when you're not having success in your other area.
It gave me more balance than anything, to be honest, because it's so easy to get in your own head, especially when you're in the world of athletics and you're playing in a team function rather than an individual sport where whether you want to or not, you start thinking of whether or not you're gaining the approval of your coaches, of the front office, of your teammates. And the majority of days are you go to the field from 8 a.m. to noon, you work out, you throw, you do what you have to do. And then from noon till the rest of the night, you're either at your Airbnb or your hotel with your own thoughts.
Right.
And music kind of allowed me to step away and articulate some of those thoughts. Maybe I wrote songs about it and kind of allowed me to have a little bit of duality in my life where everything wasn't so athletic based. I didn't make my successes and failures as a person be contingent off of what I do on the field.
Must have been fun for you to be in Kona because obviously we have professional triathletes who are there. It's the most important week of their life, the most important race of their year. And as well as all the age group athletes who pay their own way to pay their $800 entry fee. They pay for their hotel, the rest of it, to basically go out and suffer for anywhere from 12 to 17 hours. What did you take away from just watching that experience?
Well, my first initial thoughts was I've been part of a sport where the majority of baseball is played by 4 or 5 countries, and this is a global event. So showing up to Kona, the first thing I noticed was all the languages that I heard around the island, and I thought that was just the coolest thing. It was just this, I remember going to the ceremony, like that opening ceremony on the first day when I flew in, and we sat at the table, and I think there was only 2 or 3 people that I sat next to where I actually could understand what they were saying, whether I heard Italian or French or Spanish. It was so cool. And I remember just sitting there eating food and seeing this massive group of athletes who have trained at all of these different venues across the world come together for this special event. And I just honestly, that was such a unique experience. And to be in the passenger seat and be supportive of somebody of their athletic endeavors rather than being in the driver's seat was such a cool experience.
That is really cool when you're able to, basically, oh, you want me to carry your bag? I'll roll your bike in. You sort of become that domestique for the other person. And,
Absolutely.
you know, you are there for them. That's a fun experience.
It really is, because it's one of those things where I've kind of been on the other side of that spectrum where people have helped me with carrying my bags and things like that. And I wanted Erica to have that same experience as well. And to be able to be that person for somebody is a whole different level of, feeling helpful and sad, and just feeling satisfaction of being there for somebody and not having it be about you.
Then your band, Weeknight Syndicate, where'd that come from?
So we ended up ultimately coming up with the name because the only time that me and my buddy Dave could ever get together to write songs was like on Tuesday nights, right after he got done working, because we'd always be busy with different endeavors on the weekends. So I think I literally went on Google and started typing up like synonyms for specific words. And I was like, I thought about like weekend, and I was like, no, I don't really like weekend. I was like, well, we did write most of our music on a Tuesday, and then we just kind of said the word together. And then Dave and I were like, yeah, that works. Let's put that down. Let's put that down. Sure.
And it
And
becomes real when the drummer gets the logo tattooed on his tricep.
oh, so you saw that? Yeah, he absolutely has the tattoo on his tricep. I love that. I love the dedication that he brought to it.
And how far have you guys gone with the music? Do you go out and perform?
We never got the chance to. We actually talked about playing a couple of small venues in the Chicagoland area, and then unfortunately, well, one, I moved to Minneapolis for a couple of years, but two, then obviously the pandemic shut a lot of that down. Then we got to writing, and then we all started pursuing our own things. Dave, the drummer, actually, he's a semi-professional hockey player now. He plays up in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, so he's gone every weekend now. And our guitarist, he goes around the country, playing acoustic sets for people, and he lives in Chicago. So like getting all three of us together is a little bit tricky, but every time we do, it's always just a fantastic time. And it's become such a great outlet just for writing and talking about things that are going on in our lives, and then trying to articulate it and put it down on paper and music.
Okay, so it's one thing to be a domestique when the person is, during the week helping them whatever they need to have done. But on race day, they're out there. What the hell did you do all day long? That's a long day to try to fill.
I ate so much food. I'm not gonna lie. I ate so much food. I was with her dad and her sister and her sister's husband, and I remember like it's one of those things where like she was gone every Saturday. That's her longest training day of the week, and
Right.
so I was off doing my own things always. But until I was actually on the island, and when she was actually out there competing, then I truly felt how much time goes into this. It was like an actualization of what it is that she accomplished,
Right.
and I gained a whole new profound level of appreciation for her athletic career, because it's just so different from what I do. Like I throw a baseball for maybe half a second at a time and I get gassed. And they're out there for 10 to 12 hours just putting themselves through mental torment and doing all of these incredible things. So I mean, I was out there, I think I must have ate 4 or 5 different meals, if anything, out of nervousness.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've never really been in a passenger seat for somebody before, and we know that people can face complications in the triathlon life. And more than anything, I just wanted to make sure that she was okay.
Watching her come across the finish line.
Oh, we still joke about that to this day, because there's people that cross the finish line and you can see that they're just ready to just fall asleep or like things like that. I'll never forget it, because I got the video of her going across the finish line, and she just out of nowhere kind of pulls up her watch and just kind of gives this and time. I'm like, the person behind her, like her legs were shaking, and she's just there, just hitting her time.
Another workout. Yeah, and it's so funny because the reality is you got chip timing everywhere. Nobody really needs to have their own watch at that point. It's not like, oh, we're gonna miss your time. Everybody's got it. It's so funny. But so she seemed fine after the race. It was like no big deal.
She did. Honestly, I think it was just probably a different level of, for lack of better term, just like being on another planet, just being on cloud nine. And like it's Kona. It's one of the world's most prestigious platforms to compete in any venue, and to be able to do that, especially after the pandemic delayed it for so long for all of these athletes. Yeah, I would have never been able to tell how tired she was, because she was just still so alive and was able to hold the conversation with us in the hotel. And it was almost like it didn't even happen for her when when she was talking with us. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, are you okay? Can I get you anything? Can I hold something for you? And she's like, no, I'm good. I got my stuff.
So when you go to spring training with the Yankees, I mean, you're talking about a team that's going to be wanting to win the pennant and potentially go to World Series. Are you guaranteed a spot on the major league roster at this point, or is spring training basically a proving ground at this point?
Spring training is absolutely a proving ground for me. It's been 3.5, 4 years since I've played in a recorded game. Like I said, it's been a very unique journey for me in the sense of having to overcome injury, overcome obviously the pandemic, just like everybody else. It's been a long road, but really excited for the opportunity to show up to spring training because who I was 4 years ago isn't the same person I am now. And I'm not just talking from a physical standpoint, but in terms of emotional maturity and understanding and appreciating what's in front of me. I get to prove that when I'm out there playing. I feel like sometimes I'm playing on borrowed time rather than it's my rite of passage, which a lot of younger, immature athletes tend to think that way. I've had to go and live life in the real world for a few years, start my own business, and I have this new found appreciation for getting a second chance. So I'm not going to let that go to waste.
Now, what's your other business?
So I run a remote training company called Good Baseball. So I have about 30 to 35 clients all across the country, from high school to other MLB guys who I actually train. I have multiple certifications as a personal trainer and performance enhancement specialist. So all of the stuff that I've learned in the last 4 years, I didn't want it to go to waste. And to be honest, I'm really grateful that I did start it because as we know, chasing any athletic dream can be costly. And without the guys that I trained through Good Baseball, I don't know if I would have financially been comfortable with continuing to chase this dream. And I would have probably done something else to continue pursuing moving forward in life. So I'm really grateful that I did start that business because I've made connections with a lot of really great people, a lot of really cool athletes, and seeing them develop their own stories has been another level of satisfaction.
How hard was it to come back from Tommy John surgery?
It it's definitely hard. I'm very lucky in the sense that my brother had the surgery in 2005. So I had a family member who had undergone it during a much more rough time when we didn't have as articulate of a rehab plan. I was very lucky in the sense that I live in Grays Lake, Illinois right now. It's 3 minutes away from my brother's baseball training facility, and it's about 4 minutes from my rehab site where the head guy there, his name's Christian Chebney, he had done clinics for the Milwaukee Brewers, which made me feel a lot more confident in knowing that he's familiar with the elbow and rehab protocols. So I had everything centralized for me and super close, and that made the process so much easier. Not to mention being near my family was a key element.
Psychological part of getting on a mound again and not knowing when you let it go. I mean, was there trepidation there when you first started throwing? And when did you get to the point where you realized, okay, it's good?
I think I had a pretty unique perspective on that because the majority of guys in professional baseball that get Tommy John surgery, they usually do it under the shroud of an organization. And when an organization sees a player as a potential asset, they kind of make them move very slowly through the progression. I think I touched the mound maybe the fifth or sixth week after starting my throwing protocol, which is in most people's cases probably 4 or 5 months too early. But I was throwing it. I was throwing it probably 50 miles an hour tops, and I'm a big believer that using the slope and becoming familiar with the slope is more important than throwing on a flat surface. So I kind of just told myself, look, this is the reality of my career right now. If I want to prove to people that I can get back to the game, I need to get really comfortable and treat the mound like it's my office. I did almost all of my throwing on the slope right away. So I had this really unique perspective. And I think in the long run, that really helped carry into making sure that I stayed healthy through the whole process and come back faster than usual.
So you've seen some of the stuff on our CAF athlete, Landa Sims, who's missing all four limbs, made his high school varsity baseball team, just went to Antarctica with Joe Musgrove. And that's pretty fun watching as somebody who understands biomechanics, watching him throwing and catching with the glove. You must look at that and go, that's pretty interesting.
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. But it's obviously caveated with that. And I actually remember seeing it on MLB's Instagram page. I was like, oh yeah, Joe Musgrove's in Antarctica. I was like, Oh yeah, Bob was telling me about that back in October. I should reach out to him and see how he's doing. So I immediately thought of you and shot you a text, and I was so happy to see that come to fruition and actually see them go to Antarctica and throw that first pitch.
So cool. They had the best time ever. Yeah, he threw 88, I think Joe did, and Landis threw 44.
Awesome. I
How
love
perfect
it.
is that? I love it. Hey, DJ, we're gonna you all our triathletes now are now DJ Snelten fans, and we're gonna be so excited to watch you on the Yankees and hopefully pitching in Yankee Stadium. Have you pitched in Yankee Stadium before?
I've actually never been to New York, so it'll be cool to hopefully have my first experience in New York be in pinstripes.
I love it. DJ, thanks so much for taking time. What a treat to get to chat with you. And hopefully you'll see it at not only baseball games, but we'll see you at some triathlons down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being able to talk with you.
DJ Snelten has been our guest, everybody. Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. See ya.
Thank you.